John Cena did not research Peacemaker at the behest of James Gunn. This bothers me because, first of all, before I get started, we just finished watching Reacher, which I've sung the praises of, and the guy who plays him... Stop yawning.
That was a delayed reaction.
Thank
okay.
You. I'm just kidding. Okay, so the guy who plays him, Alan Richardson, read all 24 of the Jack Reacher books in preparation for that role, and he embodies that character to a very large extent, and you feel there's a lot of like love for the character and passion in the way that the story's told by how closely they stick to the to getting the vibe of those books. From what I've told from people who read them, I have two friends who because after we posted our video about this, I made a rare exception where I posted on Instagram about that show saying like, you should go watch this. And I linked to the review and they're like, this is absolutely spot on in as much as it can be translated from book to television. It's spot on for that character. And so for this is that thing where he tells them, he's like, don't do research for this character. Says HBO Max's Peacemaker has unsurprisingly little to do with the source material put out by Charlton in DC that preceded it. And there is a huge reason why the adult-oriented spin goes in its own direction. So it says, the reason is the driving force behind the series, the Suicide Squad writer and director James Gunn, who did not want his star John Cena digging through back issues for inspiration. So he told him, don't look into the character and don't read about him. On the show's companion podcast, Podly, Cena commented he was prepared to get every comic or periodical or anything about Peacemaker and study up, but Gunn said no to that. And as such, Cena did not read any comics before or during production to Gunn. Because many different artists have given different interpretations of Peacemaker, it was up to him and Cena to craft a new one in this generation. Cena added, I think he didn't want me to read those comics because he didn't want me to develop biases. That would interfere with the reimagining of Peacemaker as a douchey Captain America that doesn't come from the Charlton comics. It says, James Gunn obviously kept some things such as the costume, the Dove of Peace logo, the absurdly long handgun, a Desert Eagle. I forgot about that. He carries a Desert Eagle and he has an eagle named Eagly. It's very American.
Yes.
And the unmistakable helmet, which is often compared to a toilet bowl and seat. But Gunn also likes to inject his R-rated brand of meta humor and often to the detriment of the material. In the HBO Max series, The Suicide Squad, Peacemaker is another flawed and insecure wannabe hero with daddy issues that's in and over his head. He's Peter Quill for mature audiences. Paul Kupperberg gave the Silver Age hero a dark past when DC acquired and relaunched him, but you could still take the story seriously. So what is interesting about this is a very common thing for Hollywood to do, which is like they don't care about these characters, they don't care about their legacies, they don't care about anything that has been built before this. They just want to use the audiences that do love these characters to build their own brand and platforms by relaunching it as whatever they imagine it as. The problem is it works in this case. And that's a problem because James Gunn is a rare example of an extremely talented writer and director who can do his own thing a lot of the time when he's adapting source material, and it works. Most directors don't have that ability. So it kind of gives other directors permission to be like... seemingly give them permission, like, I'll just do that myself. I'll tell them not to research, not do anything like this. But that doesn't mean you're going to have James Gunn's writing style or his ability to convey humor in a way that gets you lost in the story. When I watch this, I don't, luckily, I didn't have any connection to the core character, right? This is not, that Peacemaker as a character is a fairly deep cut from DC Comics, not one that I have any history reading, but even the people that I talked to that did read it said that they were okay with this because it feels very entrenched in its own story and it's developed, and they aren't calling back other than the visual cues to the character on a regular basis other than the villain being his dad. So Gunn is able to do this. Most directors and writers wouldn't be able to, and you'd think that even then they'd still want him to have some idea of different iterations of this character. However many different writers have tackled it, maybe take 2 to 5 issues from each of them and try to meld them into the character at least a little bit, and they choose not to do that. So like we were talking about before, wouldn't it be easier to just come up with your own stuff? But they're not going to do that. So instead we get this kind of lazy, it works here, but it doesn't work in other cases. Most people, when they adapt these characters, they would want to know as much about the character as possible beforehand. Like, I can't imagine going and being asked to portray something that already exists. Imagine being told to portray Romeo and Juliet and not reading the story beforehand.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, like, it makes it so John Cena, the actor, can't leave any of his personal biases or his psychological understanding of, like, the nuances between relationships. But James Gunn has read the material, probably a lot of it. So, like, really, in some ways, you might say that this allows James Gunn to be in total control of how the character is,
which makes Cena more of a blank slate.
Makes Cena a blank slate, but it means that he's like, well, I don't want you to bring your perceptions of the character
into it. Oh, wow, they
into
actually use that term. It's a clean slate.
But James Gunn is bringing his interpretations, which is, like, his right as the director. I just don't think we should. I think it is worth acknowledging that, like, neither one of them is going. I mean, only one of them is going in totally blind, which is actually a testament to John Cena's work. But like, you know, it's sort of a controlling move on James Gunn's part.
Which, as a director, it's his job to get the best performance that he can, given the material he's written, and try to get the best performance out of these actors.
I don't know if it's a question of best performance. It's a question. I mean, in this case, he is in control. He is the one influencing how John Cena portrays the character, instead of leaving. And, like, maybe he just doesn't, you know, good on John Cena for doing it. Maybe it's actually that James Gunn, just as a different perspective, didn't trust how John Cena would
interpret the material. Yeah, it says, and then I enjoyed some of the comments here. It says, I don't think it would have made a difference if he had or not. And then one person says, not surprising. Gunn's version of Guardians of the Galaxy barely resembles the source material and is a blatant ripoff of the show Farscape. Actually, a show I've just recently started. I'd gotten recommendations on that show for years.
What's Farscape
It's
about?
Like I have a really hard time. I just started, like, just the other day. It's like a Canadian sci-fi show from the late 90s, I believe. It says not so. Yeah, so it says, yep, Guardians of the Galaxy will always be Starhawk, Charlie X, they're just going through, and so a lot of people are just like, I was surprised more people weren't more outraged, because I'm not really, like, I give a lot of leeway because the performance is really good, but I just don't think most directors and writers are going to have the same success trying to mold the actor that way, because Gunn is a unique talent. It says, Gunn knows absolutely nothing about the characters he works on. He has no regard for them, despise them, and its adaptations are abominable, and put to shame the characters' legacies. Who is surprised here? So who are they really trying to appeal to here? Like I said, the job of James Gunn is to appeal to a wider audience, but it always ends up becoming kind of a weird middle ground where you want to keep the people who made these characters famous happy, because they're your word of mouth conduit to the general public. You know, Spider-Man is as popular as he is because the big comic book fans made him, palatable to normies in the movies. So people push that message. It says, gee, really? I couldn't get away from how unfamiliar Gunn's bad ideas came across when compared to the comics I read some odd years ago. Like I said, it doesn't bother me. Like, I just think it's interesting this year, because under normal circumstances, I would have been more offended by this, him, like, not wanting him to look into it at all, but it didn't bother me. So it's, I can't think, is there anything you've watched, like, in anime? Do they do that? Is there any similar type of behavior? Do they try to stick fairly close to the source material?
It depends. If they're doing the live adaptation, especially for the Netflix one, they try to stay close to the source material, but then they'll change it. One bad example is Death Note, where they change everything.
Yes.
But the Bleach one wasn't...
What did they change about? I haven't seen it.
So basically, L's supposed to be dark-haired, and he's supposed to be... because, like, in the Netflix adaptation, I think they made L a black guy.
Okay.
They made him a black guy, and he's, like, socially okay, but in the comic books, basically he's mentally autistic, so, like, he has social anxiety, where, like, basically he will talk to you, but he's not talking to you, and he has a habit of eating nonstop. He kind of looks like one of those kids, like, that was kind of touched in the head a little bit. And then Light is supposed to be... He's supposed to be scary and all-knowing, like, when he knows that he has a power to kill people with the Death Note. Like, he thinks that he's God. But in Netflix's adaptation, basically, he's a wimp, and his girlfriend, who is supposed to be the love interest in the manga, she turns into the psychopath in their adaptation. It's not bad.
That's a fair amount of change.
There's a fair amount of change. That's why I said this is not a good example, but they'll change it like that, where they're trying to make it new to introduce it to a new audience. But I feel like if they kept to the original source, I think, like, new audience, like, new customers or audiences will, like, appreciate it more.
And some things just don't lend themselves to adaptation well, which
Exactly.
is, I don't think that's really the case here. I think I think the character that they've created in this show does really well. And like I said, I give Gunn a lot of credit because I love Cena's. As you know, I've sung the praises of Cena's performance in this show. In fact, we're going to do episode. That's Thursday. Tomorrow's Kimmy, and then Thursday is Peacemaker. So, I just thought it was an interesting article because I tend to disagree with his take, but think that the performance here worked. It's like that meme where it's like when you use the wrong formula but get the right answer. That's what I thought of when I read this. So.
It's funny when you can't do it right.
Yeah, well, like I said, is this more common? Like I said, Netflix, but I'm talking about like manga to anime adaptation.
Well, it depends who you're talking to because some people say there's like some things that are a little bit changed. Like Black Butler is a good example where the manga series so you're following the character CL. I'm not pronouncing his name right.
Okay.
CL and Sebastian. Sebastian is his butler who's from hell. And he only has that butler because he was about to die, but he made a contract with the devil saying, if you let me live longer, I will change this world to be under my domain and I will rule it. And basically they said, okay, then in exchange, I want your eye. So that's why he wears an eye patch because the mark of the devil.
Oh, crazy.
And like his butler is his personal devil that's gonna take his soul when he dies for sure. And like
way more interesting than anything we get.
Yeah, but it's funny because in the manga there's like a hint of gay in it. Like it was originally supposed to be gay, but they changed it in the anime series because he's a little bit underage.
Oh, okay. Yeah, probably a good idea.
Sense.
They changed it for that, and then season 2 they kind of rushed it because they wanted to talk about like new character who looks like Sebastian, but it isn't Sebastian.
Okay.
But he has a different kid that he's supposed to be his butler for, but his tattoo's like on his tongue. And like they rushed it, and a lot of people were upset about it because they were like, this doesn't follow along the lines of the comics because they're making the story a little bit rushed so it can collide together.
Okay.
But Sebastian like hint of gay with CL, but whatever.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.